They told us, from the time we were children, nobody ever escapes. And if you try, your family disappears with you. It's 2:14 in the morning. The temperature is minus 17 degrees. Somewhere behind me, there's a soldier with a rifle and orders to shoot on sight. And I'm already moving. My name doesn't matter anymore. Where I'm from, a small town pressed up against the Yalu River in the north, doesn't matter either. What matters is what I saw, what I could no longer unsee. Growing up, I believed everything. You have to understand, there was nothing else to believe. The portraits of the great leader hung in every room, every single room. Your home, your classroom, the clinic where your grandmother died. You cleaned them first, before you cleaned anything else. If the inspectors came and found a smudge, that was a conversation. And conversations in my country didn't always end the way you hoped. But that's not even close to the strangest part of growing up there. We had something called the Inminban, a neighborhood watch, except the neighbors weren't watching for crime. They were watching for disloyalty. Mrs. Choi, 2 doors down, she smiled at you every morning and reported every unusual visitor to her unit leader by nightfall. My mother knew this. We all knew this. So we smiled back. At school, we were taught that the outside world was starving, that South Korea was a colony of American oppressors, that our hunger, and there was always hunger, was a form of patriotism. I was 17 when I first heard something different. A cousin, a whisper, a tiny screen barely bigger than my palm. A South Korean drama smuggled in on a memory card smaller than a fingernail. People laughing in a restaurant, clean clothes, bright lights. I watched it 3 times before she buried it back in the floor. That image never left me. For 2 years, I carried that image quietly. I went to work. I attended the mandatory political sessions. I clapped when we were supposed to clap. I wept when we were supposed to weep. Then my father was summoned. He left on a Tuesday morning with his jacket buttoned wrong. He didn't come back that night, or the next. When my mother went to ask, she was told to stop asking. It was 3 weeks before we understood what had actually happened. A neighbor had reported him. For what, exactly, we never learned. Perhaps someone heard something through a wall. Perhaps he'd asked a question he shouldn't have asked. In my country, curiosity itself was criminal. He appeared 3 months later, thinner, quieter. Something behind his eyes had gone. Whatever fire had lived there was simply gone. That was the moment. Not a dramatic revelation, not a speech. Just my father's eyes across a dinner table. Empty. I decided that night I was leaving. You cannot just leave. You cannot buy a ticket. You cannot pack a bag. You cannot say goodbye. The border to the south? Forget it. That's not a border. It's a graveyard with fences. Millions of landmines. Armed towers. Soldiers on both sides watching each other breathe. North. That was the only direction. The Yalu River. China. I had grown up watching that river from a hillside. In winter, it freezes. In theory, you could walk across. In theory. I needed one person, just one, and choosing wrong would mean a prison camp. Choosing wrong would mean my family would follow me there. The person I chose was the last person anyone would have suspected. His name was Junho, a traitor, older than me by 15 years. He crossed into China regularly, officially. He knew the patterns, the schedules, the gaps. I approached him in a marketplace, quietly, once. I said nothing that could be repeated. He said nothing back. The next morning, a folded paper appeared under the heel of my shoe at work. 3 nights from now, 2 in the morning, bring nothing you cannot carry in your hands. I burned the paper over our cooking stove and told no one, not even my mother, especially not my mother. The night arrived the way terrible things do, too quickly. I lay on my bed fully dressed until 1:45. I didn't sleep. I listened to my mother breathing in the next room. I memorized that sound. At 1:50 I rose, put on 2 sets of socks, 3 layers under my coat. No flashlight. Flashlights get you killed. I opened the door the way I had practiced for 3 nights, slow, 1 centimeter at a time. The hinges were old. I had oiled them 2 days ago using the fat from dinner. The street was empty. The air hit my face like a blade. -12, maybe colder. I made it 40 meters before I heard the footsteps. Someone was walking the alley behind me. Slow, heavy, official. A patrol, earlier than scheduled. I pressed my back against a wall. Brick, cold as iron, through 3 layers of clothing. I stopped breathing. The footsteps slowed. I heard him pause. I heard a cigarette lighter click. The brief orange glow. I could see it reflected in the frosted window across the lane. He lit his cigarette. He walked on. I waited 4 more minutes before I moved again. Every second felt like a year. I reached the riverbank at 2:07. Junho was already there. No greeting, just movement. He pointed at the ice. Nodded once. The river was frozen, but not everywhere. He knew where. That was why I needed him. He had walked this ice before in winter. He knew which sections held weight and which sections sang before they broke. We moved in single file, no words, just footsteps and the sound of frozen water shifting beneath us. I kept my eyes forward and my arms slightly out. If the ice gave way, if I went under in that darkness, that was the end. No drama, no rescue, just the river and the cold and the current pulling you south beneath 4 inches of ice. We were 2/3 of the way across when the light swept over us. A searchlight from the North Korean side. Slow, methodical, arcing across the ice. Junho dropped instantly, flat on the white surface. I did the same. My cheek pressed against the ice. I could feel the cold burning through my skin. I did not move. I did not breathe. The light passed over us, returned, paused. 5 seconds. 10. Then it moved on. Junho was already crawling forward on his elbows. I followed. We reached the Chinese bank at 2:31. We did not celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate yet. Junho had arranged a car, a contact, someone who moved people north toward the city. A 3-hour drive, safe house, then a plan for what came next. The car arrived on schedule. A man I had never seen. Heavy coat, no eye contact. We drove for 40 minutes in silence. Then the car stopped. We were not at the safe house. We were nowhere. A dirt road between dark fields. No lights, no buildings. Just the driver staring straight ahead. Junho reached out and grabbed my wrist so hard it left marks. Another car behind us. Headlights. Stationary. Junho said one word, very quietly. Out. We left through the passenger door into the dark. Ran into a frozen cornfield, stalks snapping under our feet like gunshots. I didn't look back. I didn't ask questions. I ran. Later, much later, Junho told me that the driver had been paid by someone to make a call, to report a pickup. We never found out who had arranged it. We never found out who had been in that second car. I stopped asking eventually. In that world, in any of the worlds I passed through, trust was a resource you spent carefully. Once spent, it was gone. What followed was not a single night. It was weeks. You think escaping is one moment, a sprint across a line. It isn't. It's hours crouched behind a gas station because a police car has been parked outside for 20 minutes. It's eating from someone else's garbage because you have no money and your body is consuming itself. It's sleeping in cold rooms with 6 other people you cannot speak to because you don't share a language, and one wrong word finishes everything. Junho and I separated after the cornfield. He had another route, another plan. I had an address, written in my memory, not on paper. A city, a district, a name. I walked when I could. I hid when I had to. On the 6th day, I made the mistake that almost ended everything. I spoke. A market. I was hungry, lightheaded, shaking. I reached for something on a stall, and the vendor spoke to me in Mandarin. I answered in Korean. Just 3 words. Sorry. How much? His eyes changed, just slightly. The way eyes change when something clicks into place. I left before he could reach for anything. I walked, not ran, never run in public, Junho had told me. I walked 2 blocks and turned into an alley and pressed my back against a wall and stayed there for 2 hours. Nobody came. But I learned something in that alley. Every single day, the margin between being found and not found was measured in seconds. 1 moment of carelessness, 1 lapse. That was all it took. I found the network Junho had told me about. People who helped people like me move further. Toward Mongolia, north and west, through the desert. There were 5 of us who left together. A woman, 2 men I didn't know, a boy, maybe 16. None of us used real names. The Gobi in winter is not a desert like you imagine. No sand, no heat. It is flat, pale, frozen, and it goes on forever. The wind is constant and it has no temperature. It is simply pain. We walked at night, slept in what shelter we could find during the day. On the 3rd night, a vehicle appeared behind us. Distant headlights moving slowly, following our tracks in the snow. One of our group said it was probably nothing. He was wrong. The lights stopped. 2 figures got out. They were moving toward us. We split without a word. The desert swallowed us into the dark. I ran for 20 minutes at full pace before I fell. Hit frozen ground face first. Lay there gasping. Listened. Nothing. Just wind. I stayed down for a long time before I was sure. I found the others the next morning. All but one. The boy was gone. We didn't speak about it. We couldn't afford to. By the 4th day, my feet were something I tried not to think about. I didn't take my boots off because I was afraid of what I would see. I just kept moving. The Mongolian border appeared on the horizon in the late afternoon. A low wire fence. 2 soldiers. My heart rose and fell in the same second. We watched from a distance for 2 hours. The soldiers moved in a pattern. There was a window. The man in our group with the most experience volunteered to go first. He walked toward them openly, hands visible, no sudden movement. We watched him talk to them. One soldier nodded. The other reached for a radio. What happened in the next 30 seconds determined whether we lived or died. The first soldier put his hand on the second soldier's arm, stopped him. He pointed toward us. He was waving us forward. I didn't trust it. Every instinct I had built over years of surveillance was screaming, but I walked forward anyway, because I had nothing left. The Mongolian soldiers were young. One of them looked cold himself. They spoke to our man, who translated fragments. You will be taken to a center. You will be processed. You will not go back. That last sentence. You will not go back. I had heard words my entire life that meant nothing. Slogans, pledges, promises hollered at mandatory rallies. I had learned not to trust language. But something in the way he said it, I believed him. We were put in a vehicle, driven across flat ground, taken to a building with electric lights and something warm to drink. I held the cup with both hands for a long time before I drank it. There are things I think about even now. I think about my mother, the sound of her breathing that last night, whether she was still breathing when they came to ask where I had gone. I think about the boy who disappeared in the desert. I don't know his name. I don't know which direction he ran. I hope he made it. I let myself believe he made it. I think about the portrait that hung in our classroom, how I used to clean it every morning without a thought, how normal that was, how impossible that seems now. The hardest part wasn't the ice or the cold or the desert. The hardest part was this. Freedom doesn't arrive as a feeling. Not at first. It arrives as silence. For the first weeks in South Korea, and later in my new life, I kept waiting for the knock, the inspection, the summons, the thing you were trained from birth to expect. It didn't come. It still hasn't come. And slowly, over months, over years, I stopped waiting. That's what freedom actually is. It's not a door you walk through once. It's the day you stop flinching at footsteps behind you. The day you realize no one is watching. I'm still working on that day, but I'll get there. They told us nobody ever escapes. They were wrong.